they actually did it. Paradox actually made a game that's passable on launch. Look, I know that 2020 has had some crazy stuff happen, but Paradox Interactive releasing a good launch title? Nobody saw that coming. So get ready to fabricate a claim, murder a child, and sleep with your sister. Cause it's Crusader King's time. Despite being nice and difficult to actually buy over here in Monopoly Moneyland, the launch of Crusader Kings 3 has made quite a splash, with a current 92% positive review score on Steam, and rightly so. CK3 deviates itself enough from its predecessors to justify being a sequel and not just a patch or cosmetic upgrade, but most importantly it doesn't stray away from what makes the series fun, its free-flowing sandbox core with its heavy roleplay elements. I'm certainly not going to use the term simplified, but there are a few obstacles you'd have to hurdle over in CK2 that aren't quite there in CK3, but we're comparing a launch title to a game that's been out for 8 years. Compared to launch CK2, it's a complete knockout. Even with CK2 breathing down its neck, I don't feel like my money was wasted on this game, and for Paradox fans or anyone looking to break into the grand strategy genre, CK3 is a game you should definitely be looking at. As is standard for a Paradox review, I could sit here and talk about all of CK3's features and nuances all day, but just like Team Fortress 2 getting another update, it ain't gonna happen. To sum it up, it's a grand strategy title about expanding your dynasty's lands through war, politics, marriage, murder, and some good old-fashioned selective breeding. Unlike many strategy games, you're not really playing as a nation, but as individual characters, and there is a more roleplay heavy focus with lots of character interaction and intrigue. Each ruler will have their own traits and stats as well, between their diplomacy, martial, stewardship, intrigue, and learning, along with other different available focuses that will shape the way that they interact with other rulers and administer their realm. And not only will you need to worry about your neighbors, but your internal politics as well, as you attempt to keep all of your vassals happy and the succession safe when your character dies and you pass the reins over to your heir. Inevitably, some of the land goes to your siblings, but it's nothing a bit of fratricide won't fix. As previously mentioned, CK3 does not stray away from its sandbox roots and gives you plenty of freedom to set out and do whatever the hell it is you want. There's no end goal, no winner of each campaign. Whether it was successful or not is completely up to you. I find that it's generally more fun to start small, either as a minor independent nation or a vassal within another realm, as it's not only easier to get a grip on what's happening when you have less to worry about at the start, but there's an incredible sense of satisfaction as you progress from count to duke to king to emperor. The game only has 2 start dates currently, during the Viking Age on the 1st of January 867 and the start of the invasions of England on the 15th of September 1066, as well as having a handful of suggested starts as well. It'll likely happen with expansions in the future, but I'd like to see the Charlemagne start re-added or perhaps an even slightly earlier start date. And if you're looking to break into the genre, you'll be glad to know that this is also the first Paradox game in existence with a passable tutorial that's actually somewhat intuitive and does a decent job of explaining a lot of the game's mechanics. I still think that there's no better way to learn than to just play the game a bit, however, particularly in a place like Ireland. Just not in the 867 start, because Vikings are quite OP. Lots of things have changed in CK3, notably the fact that each holding slot in a county is its own individual spot on the map, meaning that armies will move between each barony specifically, and that each county can encompass multiple different terrain types. Army morale is pretty much only existent in each individual battle and has been replaced by the army quality system, which is reliant on knights. Depending on your realm size and your focus trees, you'll have a certain number of knights who will accompany your armies and increase their quality, reliant on their prowess stat. I think that this system works well for the game, as it's reliant on characters specifically rather than just another modifier or stat, as is much of the rest of the game, so it simply makes more sense this way. Being able to choose specific rally points for your army, rather than only being able to raise them in your domain and having to manually bunch them all together, is also a great addition and an extra level of convenience. Character traits have changed a bit as well, with each character having 3 personality traits along with other traits acquired through events or focus trees. I do wish that personality traits were dynamic, because I never saw anyone's personality change, which I think is kinda unrealistic. Characters can still choose a focus like in CK2, but it is far more in depth, with each skill having 3 different focuses and 3 different skill trees to complete. Depending on a character's education, they will progress through certain trees faster, and characters will often have full or partial trees unlocked once you take over as them. The council is still quite similar, and powerful vassals will still demand rolls on it, but now tasks are a progress bar rather than a random chance, which I felt a little ambivalent about. On one hand, it takes away from some of the RNG aspect of the game, which can make it more interesting, but at the same time, fabricating claims in CK2 was a pain in the dick. The council has basically no power, however, and can't prevent you from declaring wars or taking certain actions without being a tyrant, which is kinda lame. The tech system has been completely overhauled, now being per culture, with each group making discoveries which gives new unlocks such as succession laws or extra domain limit. The most powerful ruler of each culture is the cultural head, and can dictate which discovery they focus on. There are more cultures on the map now, as well as a shitload of new religions, with many more variants of Islam and a few more for Catholicism. Each religion has 3 tenets and a bunch of doctrines as well, such as whether or not they hate women, and you can even create your own branch of faith should you have enough piety. In terms of game balance, I feel as though CK3 could still use some, especially for alliances. You can just straight up decline calls to arms, both defensive and offensive, without breaking the alliance or giving any other negative modifiers, only a slight relations penalty. That's pretty goddamn overpowered, and very easy to exploit against the AI. You can't get alliances through grandchildren or nieces and nephews, which does prevent you from just being able to get a load of easy alliances through non-inheriting relatives. The AI is less likely to accept marriages for alliances if you already have a bunch as well. There's also just a straight up disinherit button, which only costs a bit of prestige and splendor. It's very overpowered. You can more or less just select your heir and prevent yourself from being gavel-kinded. I guess the trade-off is that getting primogeniture succession is much more difficult unless you basically start as the Byzantine Emperor, but it's still far too easy to disinherit your less competent children and to keep all of your lands together upon succession. The Wartime AI is not great, neither in attack nor defense, and there's a distinct lack of extra commands you can give to allies, such as getting them to attach to your armies or set them specific war goals. Considering how these are in basically every other Paradox game in existence, it makes no sense for them not to be here, and makes allies rather unreliable during crucial wars. One balancing aspect that's an improvement is to do with character traits and decisions. Certain traits such as brave and ambitious actually have some debuffs now, not enough to make them undesirable, but it means that they're not without some compromise. I also very much like that taking certain actions would give you stress if they contradicted with your character traits. It really emphasized the roleplay aspect of the game and steered you away from playing every character in the exact same way. I did find stress to be a little non-threatening, however, and even when getting mental breaks, it was very easy to just work the stress off. The mental breaks sometimes giving you an extra desirable trait along with the stress relief. Stress levels ought to give some more debuffs or bad events to make them worth avoiding. CK3 is clearly a graphical improvement on its predecessor in more than one way. Right from the off, the map is much nicer looking, especially when zoomed fully out and you get its old paper map aesthetic, which is fantastic. And it's all well and good for the map to look prettier, but one of the single best additions is the ability to break realms into all of the vassal states by simply selecting a vassal ruler without having to switch map modes. It's the default view if you're playing as a vassal, as it should be, because it simply makes the realm a lot easier to navigate. In general, I found the UI to be quite easy to wrap your head around and nice and easy to navigate. I would also like to mention how much better the character models in this game are than the portraits in CK2, and how they seamlessly change with age and other traits as well, though one of my wives did try to get me demonetized for some reason. I don't know why she was always naked. But aesthetically, CK3 just does a lot of little things that are incredibly satisfying. From how unit model animations will change in battle and will start to get the shit slapped out of them when they lose, to how the characters on the title screen will change to the characters in your most recently saved game. None of this stuff really affects anything, but it makes me very happy nonetheless. You can still rename your dynasty as well as the names of titles, but there are a few customization options missing, such as being able to change your coat of arms or being able to make a custom character. But hey, it's nothing some future DLC won't fix, right? There's been a lot of crazy shit in 2020, but I still think that Crusader Kings 3 being a worthy launch title has gotta be up there. I clocked an easy 60 hours into the game very quickly, and while I won't argue against the fact that I'm clearly biased, it's still a very good game in its own right. There are still a few features from CK2 DLC that are missing here, but let's be real, who the hell plays as a Republic anyway? And on top of what has already come from its predecessor, CK3 has also added its own features and flavors to make itself a proper sequel and not just a glorified DLC expansion. Does CK3 have the depth of CK2? Not quite. Hard to blame it though, considering how long CK2 has been sucking DLC money out of our pockets throughout its 8-year reign, but it's time for it to step aside, for its plucky young heir to take the throne, and we can only hope that CK3's reign is a prosperous and slightly less expensive one.